Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's educational webinar hosted the International Trade Council. I am Anne, your host for today's sessions. So before we start the presentation, let's make sure everything is running smoothly. Please type yes in the chat box if you can hear me and see the presentations. Okay, so great. It looks like we are all set now, and so let's get started with today's sessions. So today we have an exciting presentation lineup for you. The session is titled "Empower Mental Health and Resilience in Workplace, Schools, and Communities," and we'll be exploring now more than ever. Companies and school are prioritizing mental health and well-being, and many organizations have adopted programs to improve access to treatment, but struggle to find effective approaches to prevention that engage their teams to build skills and resources that increase resilience and reduce prevalence of burnout, anxiety, and depressions. So our speaker for today is Mr. Keith Wickman, the CEO and founder of Super Better. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Keith, okay?
Terrific. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Let me pull up my slides as we're getting started here. So, and as Ann talked about, we're going to talk today about how we can empower mental health and resilience in our workplaces, schools, and communities. And we have four learning objectives. We'll talk about the impact of declining mental health and how it's impacting our workplaces, schools, and communities. We'll talk about resilience. What is it and why it matters? We'll talk about I'll set the stage for why many of our current and kind of traditional approaches to empowering mental health and well-being in non-clinical settings may fall short, and how we can look at a different kind of a framework that creates a culture of well-being. And then finally, I want to leave you with practical activities that you can use today in your own life, as well as to bring back to your teams, that can be unique ways to improve mental well-being and resilience. By way of introduction, my name is Keith Wakeman. As Ann mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder at SuperBetter. I'm an innovator and a brand builder. I've led the development and launch of over $1 billion of new products. I grew up in the U.S. food industry, and so I have a brand management background. I worked with Nabisco and Keebler and Kellogg. Uh, uh, and when I was at I joined Keebler Company right after a $500 million LBO. I was part of the team that positioned Keebler for sale to Kellogg for $4.5 billion 4 years later. Unfortunately, I was too young in my career at that point to kind of cash out on that. But it was an amazing experience. But one of the things it did, I was with the combined Keebler and Kellogg company for a total of 7 years. And Keebler, of course, being the number two cookie company in America, I had led teams to launch, create and launch a lot of new cookie products. And one day I had counted up, how many new cookies had myself or the teams led the development of over those 7 years. And it was more than 30 cookies. And I remember thinking, intellectually and from a problem solving standpoint, I love it. I was all hungry to figure out what that 31st new cookie might be. But in terms of making the world a better place and making a true difference, it struck me that there are other innovations that the world may need more than that next new cookie then as well. So that led me to a path. I left large organizations. I ran a consulting business for a decade that focused on strategy and new venture development in the health, wellness, and food and nutrition sectors. And eventually that led me to founding SuperBetter. So that's a little bit about me. We're living in a mental health crisis today among youth and young adults. These are U.S. numbers. The global numbers are not good either. But the trends around declining youth and young adult mental health started way back in 2011. And so prevalence of anxiety, depression, suicide have been increasing at significant rates. This chart shows that major depression prevalence among both teenagers and young adults age 18 to 25 doubled in just a 10-year period. The pandemic shined a light on this problem, but the problem started long before, and it's not going away. In fact, it's getting worse now that we're moving into almost 2024. What the pandemic did do, though, is it shined a light on the problem and caused many organizations, including employers and schools and universities and government and community groups, to really pay attention and try to figure out solutions and put resources against addressing the problem. And so that's kind of the state that we're in now. It's relatively new for us to be living in this kind of a crisis. And so, many organizations are looking for what is that solution, what can work, what can be different, because there's an urgency to the problem to be solved. And again, it's a relatively speaking for our industries, it's a relatively new phenomenon for us to have to address. Now, what is the impact of poor mental health? Well, of course, there's a personal impact. People don't thrive when they're struggling with poor mental health, when they're struggling with anxiety or depression. We hear from universities and schools that mental health, of course, is a problem broadly, but they're seeing it more and more as a barrier to student success, which is core to their model and what they're all about, which is recruiting great students and helping them move and advance and graduate. Employers tell us that of course there's the uh, absenteeism is high and other kinds of measures that reduce productivity. But on the flip side, poor mental health is reducing the agility and adaptability of their workforces, which makes them less competitive in the marketplace. And of course, there's also a very negative impact on communities and relationships when large numbers of people are struggling with poor mental health. Now, I'm going to talk about to kind of introduce the this idea of a culture of well-being. How positive behavior change is empowered, and the problem with traditional approaches. And this may be a new way of thinking uh, uh, as well. So I'm going to just walk through a couple of slides here. So in America and Western society, we have a very traditional approach to for most programs that help us change behavior, whether it's weight loss or stress management or condition management or other kinds of self improvement. And it's this idea that education plus willpower will equal success, when the reality is that this rarely is a formula for lasting success. And it's a bit of a trap, because this is, in American culture, and in Western culture, we have this belief that, if we just know what to do, of course, we'll have the willpower to do it and we'll be successful. So it's a little bit of there's a cultural phenomenon here that's kind of working against us. And also, this is a very familiar model, because this is the model that, generally speaking, is used in our education system. We teach students content, they take tests and show their proficiency, and they're successful as well. So there are a lot of things that make this education plus willpower model feel like it should work, but again, it struggles. The easiest example to pick on is weight loss. So even the best science-backed weight loss commercial programs that exist. If 100 people start that weight loss program, some will lose weight for a little while, but if we come back and check in a year, 95 of those 100 will have gained back their weight, and many will have gained back even more. And again, you ask the question, well, why? Are they not science based? No, these are based on great science, and so there's nothing wrong with, in most cases, the science or the kind of the program itself. It's just that the model is insufficient. And the reason it's insufficient is that as humans, we're just more complex than that. Our brains, and what impacts our motivation and ability. Of course, knowledge is a part of that, and it's a very important part. But there are lots of things that are impacting our motivation and our ability, our emotions, our culture, our values, our environment, our economic status, and so on. And so when programs only focus on education and knowledge, it's incomplete, and willpower alone won't get us over the goal line in terms of sustainable impact. Another really interesting insight about how our brains work is that, and this comes out of Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. But when we human thinking, 90% of the time, our thinking is fast, emotional, and intuitive. We're just making quick decisions. We're not putting much mental energy in. And only 10% of the time do we slow down and make deliberate and logical decisions. And then when we think about it, it makes sense. If we had to slow down, uh, every time a stimuli impacted one of our senses and we had to pay attention to it, we would be stifled. We wouldn't be able to move. We would be overwhelmed by all of the stimuli. So this is an adaptive and a way that our ancestors survived, and how we make sense in this world. And only time again, there are times that we do slow down and would deliberate. An example of this is, when we're driving in a car. How many of us have driven home on a familiar path and not even really paid attention, and all of a sudden we're home and it's like, did we really drive that? But when we're driving and that little low gas light comes on, boom, all of a sudden we're alerted. We slow down. We make a deliberate and logical choice to go and fill the gas tank with gas as well. So if we want to help empower people to change behavior, we either need to impact the 90% of the time that we're fast, emotional, and intuitive, and build in habits and things that are very instinctive, or find ways to trigger and cue times for us to uh, help individuals slow down and make more deliberate decisions as well. So my background, as I shared, is in brand management. And in brand management, a lot of times new categories are created by shifting the frame of reference. A few examples are, when Starbucks was first introduced, coffee was a commodity. It was very inexpensive, and all of a sudden, Starbucks came in, but they didn't just come in and say we have a better cup of coffee. They actually changed the frame of reference. They call it the third place, but they changed it to a coffee experience and a place, and much more. So it shifted the frame of reference. It created a very multi-billion-dollar coffee experience category there as well. Way back when bagged lettuce was first introduced, you might think that bagged lettuce was the frame of reference was heads of lettuce, which was the way that you would make a salad before bagged lettuce. But the positioning of Fresh Express, the company that led there, and Dole, that was a fast follower, was that bagged lettuce was now an alternative to other convenient lunches. So it shifted the frame of reference from something, a raw ingredient I buy from the produce, to now a convenient lunch option there as well. Bottled water would be another example. When before bottled water was introduced, you would think of bottled water being an alternative to tap water. In some extenses, functionally it is, but it put water into the same set of convenience drinks like sodas and other things that you grab and go as well. So that shifting of frame of reference can be really powerful. And so that kind of thinking caused me to look for, well, are there existing frames of reference that exist in the world that could be a different way to look at how we take on self-improvement or improve mental health or well-being or other areas. And as we explored, what are the existing frames of reference that are out there in the world today, the number one broadest, most prevalent frame of reference is video game play. Today, 3 billion people around the world, nearly 40% of the world's population, regularly plays video games of some type. It may be a console, it might be something they're playing on their phone, and so on. In the U.S., it's 3/4 of children under the age of 18, and 2/3 of adults are regularly playing games. So this is the largest framework that's out there that we could find. As we were looking at this, just as an interesting sidebar, the second two largest frameworks that we could find were religions. About 2.5 billion people globally identify as part of the Christian religion, and about 2 billion the Muslim religion as well. And so games is larger, and games is also because of the polarization of religions and the different ways of interpreting games is also unique in that it spans socioeconomics, it spans culture, it spans religions as well. So it's a pretty exciting idea or opportunity to borrow from in terms of its breadth of potential appeal. Now, gameplay is broad, but what else is there about it is as well. So it turns out that when we play games, we naturally take on a different mindset. And it's a very powerful mindset. We shift when we play games in a way and approach the world differently than when we're not playing in games. Jane McGonigal shared this quote: "When we play a game, we tackle tough challenges with more creativity, more determination, more optimism, and we're more likely to reach out to others for help." Again, we shift into a very different kind of a mindset, and we'll talk more about that mindset a little bit later in the presentation. It turns out that our brains are actually different when we are playing games versus when we're just having passive exposure or traditional kinds of learning. When we play games, parts of our brains light up that are associated with motivation and learning and memory. And these are areas that don't naturally light up again with traditional learning kinds of models. So it's not, it's there's a phenomenon, there's a neurological phenomenon that happens when we shift into this mode of gameplay. Now, I do want to stop for a moment and kind of clarify that I'm not talking about gamification in this presentation. I'm talking about something that we coined the term gameful design for, or actually Jane McGonigal coined the term many years ago, but we've adopted it. So the distinction is this: gamification is the use of game techniques in non-game settings. Think badges and points and leaderboards. And they're typically used to add some type of extrinsic motivator to incentivize some type of a desired behavior. Uh, and so some organizations do gamification really well. Duolingo is a great example. Others, use it in a more rudimentary fashion as well. We don't have I don't have an opinion. Gamification, good or bad. If it's done well, it can have a benefit. If it's not done well, I think people see through it, and it can kind of have not the intended consequences. Gameful design, instead of starting with the game technique, starts in a very different place. Gameful design starts with the question of, why do 3 billion people around the world on a regular basis volunteer their time and attention to play video games? And I guarantee the answer is not badges and points and leaderboards, but it's things that are more intrinsic. When I play games, it gives me a sense of agency. I have a sense of control over my environment. I have a sense of mastery. I'm learning, I'm developing, I'm growing as I'm playing this game over time, or these games over time. I have a sense of purpose. I have goals. I have a role in the game and the like. Increasingly, social connection and social cohesion is a motivator for playing games. Today, more than 60% of all video game play is done socially. Whether or not the players are in the same room or not, they're playing together and they're working together and collaborating to achieve common goals. And so the social motivator is a very high one. And all of these intrinsic motivators are drawing people into the desire for playing games. So that's just a bit of a distinction between gamification and this term gameful design that we're talking about. So if we want to create a culture of well-being, and borrow from the framework of gameplay, how do we do that? So the next section, I'm going to just talk about a practical framework that brings to life the psychology of gameplay, and I'll talk a little bit about it. And then in the last section, I'm going to talk about kind of the specific framework itself and give examples of how it all comes to life. Now, this framework was invented by Jane McGonigal. It is the same framework that's in my company's product, Super Better. And Jane invented this framework in a out of a personal incident in her own life. She shared it in this TED Talk, which has been viewed over 8 million times. If you're a fan of TED Talks, watch it. Jane's brilliant, and this is an amazing talk. But a small piece of the story is this: Jane was in her home one day. A kitchen cabinet door was open. She didn't notice. She stood up too fast. She hit her head and got a serious concussion. And even though she was under medical care, the concussion was not healing properly. And as time went on, Jane started to experience anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Her damaged brain was saying, Jane, you have no reason to live. And finally, Jane got to the point that she said, I'm going to either create a game to help myself heal or I'm going to kill myself. And fortunately for the world, she created a game that is now called Super Better, but uses this framework that has helped over 1 million people overcome obstacles in their own lives. Now, what Jane invented was not a video game or a game that takes people away from the world, but instead a methodology or a framework that brings the same psychology that people naturally use when they play games into all of life as a way to overcome obstacles and achieve their goals. To the player, it feels like 7 simple rules. It's things like I'm collecting power ups, I'm battling bad guys, and completing quests and recruiting allies and going for epic wins. But underneath each of these rules is very strong psychology and techniques that are borrowed from best practices from cognitive behavioral therapy, from positive psychology, and from best practices in health behavior change as well. So it's brilliant in terms of its simplicity, but also the science and the psychology that underpins each of these 7 rules. And it works. This framework has been tested and evaluated in a number of randomized controlled and clinical trials. In this study at the University of Pennsylvania, using this framework for 30 days was shown to significantly reduce depression and anxiety. And you'll notice the levels of reduction. These scales measure symptoms. So the number of depression symptoms decreased by nearly 50% and anxiety by 61%. So can have a very strong impact in a relatively short period of time in terms of the depression and anxiety impacts. This approach has been evaluated and discussed in articles that have been published in over a dozen scientific journals, mostly around mental health, but also in terms of evaluating this framework for related to chronic pain or concussion recovery or even career transitions as well. This approach has been recently evaluated in a new study that's coming out of Harvard. Has been submitted to a publication for publication. It's been submitted for review to a publication, and it provides additional evidence that this approach can be very helpful. And it measured results among university students who used this framework and showed positive and significant improvements in anxiety and depression symptoms at 3 months and 6 months as well. And we expect that study will be published in 2024. So in addition to reducing anxiety and depression, this approach in the University of Pennsylvania study that I mentioned earlier shows that this approach increases resilience by improving protective factors. It improves optimism, social support, self-efficacy, which is that belief that we can be successful in achieving our goals, and life satisfaction, and by reducing obstacles to resilience and things like having less anxiety or fewer symptoms of depression. So, why resilience? Well, first, what is resilience? We use the definition of resilience as being the ability to stay strong, motivated, and optimistic, even in the face of change and difficult challenges. And there's a whole body of literature around the field of resilience, and it shows that students with higher resilience do better academically and they graduate at higher rates. Uh, Higher resilient employees are more productive, they're more agile, they're more adaptable, they're better able to withstand burnout. And there's a strong relationship between higher resilience and improved mental health as well. Resilience is also something that we're not born with or born without. Resilience is a technique and a skill that can be developed over time as well. So that's a little bit about the framework and some of the studies that have shown its effectiveness in mental health and resilience in other areas. Now, how do we bring the framework to life? So there are 7 rules, and I'm just going to walk through each of the rules and talk a little bit about each one of those. Overall, this approach can help organizations and communities and workplaces unlock the heroic potentials of their individuals and team by promoting mental health, well-being, social emotional skills or skills for success, as well as resilience. And the 7 rules, if you are interested in going deeper, Jane wrote a fantastic book called Super Better, The Power of Living Gamefully. It's a New York Times bestseller. That book has a chapter on each of the rules that goes deep into explaining the science and how it all works, and with lots of great examples. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science of each of the rules, but if you really want to go deep, there's a great resource that's out there. By the way, we love this Daniel Pink quote. And it says, grounded in scientific research and based on the experience of over 500,000 people, which is over 1 million people now, but Super Better is at heart a simple and transformative idea. We can use the same psychological strengths we display when we play games to confront real life challenges, from trauma and illness to just changing our habits for the better. So that's a great summary as well. On this chart, you'll see the 7 Super Better rules. Each one was designed to build different kinds of psychological strengths, which come to life as well. So using these rules together, helps to build optimism, sense of purpose, mental flexibility, emotion control, social connectedness, and self-efficacy as well. So let me go through each of the rules. The first is to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself really just means taking on that mindset that we naturally use when we play games. And to put this into practice, we choose an obstacle to overcome, a skill to build, or a goal to achieve. The challenge mindset is the opposite of a threat mindset. When we play games and we adopt a challenge mindset, we're playing to see what we're capable of, to push ourselves to achieve. The opposite of that challenge mindset is a threat mindset. And the threat mindset is when we play to avoid losing. We're playing out of a sense of fear. And so when we play games, we naturally gravitate towards that challenge mindset. And so we want to do that in all of life. And our brains have an amazing way of interpreting the physiological effects of our bodies in different ways. So we can choose, in many cases, to shift our thinking from playing from a sense of threat to a sense of challenge. I'm going to show an example here of how our brains can interpret how our bodies are feeling and actually shift. And this one is called the Get Excited technique. It's a technique that you can use right away, or you can bring back to your teams as well. And it's this Get Excited technique turns anxiety into excitement. It's really simple to do. I'm going to actually ask you to do it on your end of the webinar here. You can do it on mute if you but think about something that makes you nervous. Maybe you have an upcoming presentation, a big project due, a social setting that you're going into, something that's going to cause you stress and make you feel nervous. Now, as you're thinking about it, say, "I'm excited" out loud 3 times. And that's it. So all we do, and I'll do it right now, and you can do it with me on your end. "I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited." That's the Get Excited technique. And what it does is, to our bodies, physiologically, our anxiety and excitement are very similar emotions in terms of how our bodies respond to them. And this technique helps to change how our brains, how our minds interpret how we're feeling physically. We hear from teachers that use this technique with students who either have test anxiety or anxiety about standing up in front of class to give a talk, and they just share how this really changes kind of that and removes that sense of fear and anxiety that those students have, and make them much more excited and leaning into the activity versus kind of pulling away from it. So that's the first rule. The second rule is to go for epic wins. Epic wins are goals, but they're special goals. They're goals that inspire you. They're intended to be motivating. The best epic wins are realistic, but also achievable. They can be small, large, or a step towards something bigger. So don't let the word epic get in the way here. So epic doesn't necessarily mean if you want to start working out that your epic win needs to be to run a marathon. If your goal is to eventually run a marathon, maybe your epic win for this week, if you haven't done any exercise at all, is just to walk around the block 3 times a day, each day, and that could be your epic win. So that would be an example of an epic win that's a step towards something bigger. The best epic wins, again, they're realistic, but they're also achievable, and you can stack up. You can break down bigger goals into a series of epic wins as well. Having a goal is a classic best practice in health behavior change or any kind of a goal setting model as well. Completing quests is the third rule. Quests are simple daily actions that move you towards your goal or your epic win. If this was a traditional goal setting system, this would be kind of like your to-do list. I have a goal and these are my to-dos. We're huge fans of goals and quests. We're huge fans of quests that are very achievable and small steps. So we believe in the tiny habits and tiny steps approach that over time, daily small habits are what build to long-term success and outcomes versus trying to do too much, too fast and potentially, losing motivation or burning out and not completing. And so a lot of the research is showing that small daily steps over time is what builds, lasting habits. The next rule is to find and battle the bad guys. This is my favorite rule of this Living Gamefully framework. Bad guys are obstacles that get in the way of your progress. And they work by helping us identify and create awareness for things that are getting in the way. And often these obstacles, until we put a framework around it like this, they're things that we're not even aware of. So they're kind of like shadow obstacles, but we can bring them out into the light as well. I'm going to illustrate bad guys with an example as a way to kind of show how it works and the power of this rule especially. So this bad guy example is called the self-critic. It's a bad guy that most of us have to some degree. It's that little voice that says, you know what, you're not good enough, you're a failure, they're not going to like you. The copy here says, unless you're a stand-up comic or training to be a kickboxer, there's really no reason to beat yourself up. This slide shows some examples of potential strategies that can be used to overcome the self-critic bad guy as well. So the self-critic, I'll share a personal example. So when I was growing up, I had the self-critic and was a very strong bad guy for me, but I didn't know it. So I would go into a classroom or into a social setting, and all of a sudden I would get really quiet, and I would feel this like really low sense of energy, and I wouldn't know why, right? And then I would kind of I didn't know that it was this self-critic voice saying, you're high, don't speak up, right? I had no awareness of that. So actually I would double down. It's like, gosh, I feel low energy. I feel like I'm kind of being pushed back. And now I'm feeling even double shame because I should be talking up, but I'm not, right? So it's a this is a particularly tough bad guy for many people because of that double impact. As I got older, I started to realize that I did have this self-critic voice. And so now all of a sudden, when I would get into a setting or go through my day and I'd feel low energy, I could put on the test of, wow, is this the self-critic? And all of a sudden it changed everything because one, I could identify that it was the self-critic if that was the case. And then I could try different strategies to overcome it and strategies that work for me. Maybe it's taking a few minutes and just kind of meditating or being quiet, or using some examples in the past that say, people do like me, or and so whatever those strategies are that work for me, and other people may have different strategies. But what's especially powerful is now, instead of kind of beating myself up for having low energy and not really knowing what this was all about, Now I can say that's the self-critic, and the self-critic is not me, it's something that's outside of me. So I've completely reframed this obstacle, into a bad guy that's external to me. And because it's external to me, I can be objective about it. I can look at it, I can evaluate it, I can use different strategies to defeat it as well. So this is cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of in a game framework. And it's again, I'm excited about it because it's my favorite rule of playing super better, because I think it can be so helpful for so many people as well. Activating power-ups. Power-ups are quick, simple activities that give you positive energy. They make you feel healthier or happier or stronger. Power-ups come out of the field of positive psychology. Most power-ups evoke positive emotions. And positive emotions, the research in positive psychology shows that when we can shift the ratio of positive to negative emotions in our lives, it does great things for our well-being, for our emotional regulation, and for our outlook on life as well. So the research shows that when we can shift to 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 or more positive to negative, that's a good thing. We are in no way suggesting that we want to eliminate negative emotions from our lives. So this is just about the ratio. The goal is not to eliminate negative emotions. The negative emotions are important parts of our lives. They send us information and messages that are really important there as well. The way that this ratio of positive to negative emotions works is that when we're able to shift that ratio, it strengthens our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve is a nerve that runs from the back of our brains all the way down through our bodies. It touches most of our major organs, is very key to our central nervous system as well. And the stronger that vagus nerve is, the more we have improvements in emotional control and well-being as well. So there's a physical component that when we practice power-ups. One of the things about power-ups is that the research shows that more is better than longer. So if you have 5 minutes kind of spread out during the day, if you do 5 1-minute power-ups, that's better than setting aside 5 minutes and doing one power-up that's 5 minutes long. So more is better. It doesn't mean not to do the power-ups that take 5 minutes by any means, but given the choice, more quick activities are better. So I'm going to show 4 examples of power-ups. They're based on different types of resilience, so mental, emotional, social, and physical. The first one, and I'm going to ask you, if you can, if you want to open up another screen in your browser, or if you have your phone with you, you can do this one, as I'm talking. But it's an emotional resilience boosting power up called Baby Animals, and all you need to do is go into your browser and search for baby and pick whatever favorite animal you want to choose today: kangaroo, a koala bear, cat, dog, horse, and Google it and watch a video or look at photos for about 30 seconds. And that's it. So you can do that while I continue to speak here. Often I'll give this talk to a live audience, and it's really fun, for me to watch, because I can look out, and the first thing I see is people are looking at me puzzled, like, what are you asking me to do? And why would I look at a baby animal video? And and then 20 seconds later, as they're starting to watch the videos, I can see their faces light up and their smiles come on their face, and the positive emotion kind of coming to life in their expressions as well. So I'll let you can finish up, take 30 seconds, and while I continue talking, and you can do a little task for a minute. Another example of a power up. This is one about physical resilience. It's chug a glass of water. Again, you can see power-ups can be really simple and quick. And this is, chugging a glass of water. It quenches your thirst. It refreshes you. You can pay attention to the water as it goes down your throat, and have that sense of being renewed as well. So this is one that, of course, you can do later. The next time you're in the kitchen or somewhere near a glass of water. A social resilience power-up. So this one is called matching socks. And you can activate compassion and express care in another human being simply by noticing out loud something that you both have in common. This is one that if we were in a group setting in a room, we would do this together. But again, you can take this and make a note to do this after the webinar with anyone that you happen to be around. And the key is just, find something that you both have in common. It could be that you're from the same state or the same city, you went to a similar school, you have a similar hobby, or it could be as simple as noticing that you're both wearing the same color socks. And this is a really cool power-up example, because not only are you noticing something and building that bond, but when we notice something that we have in common with someone else, it releases a little bit of oxytocin, which oxytocin sometimes is called the love hormone, but it's a hormone in our brain that makes us feel more connected to other people. And when we release a little bit of oxytocin, we feel more connected to others as well. So this is a social resilience power up that can help to you and someone else release a little bit of oxytocin and make you feel both closer to each other, but it also works that you feel closer to others while the oxytocin is still active in your brain as well. The next one is the power breath. This is a mental resilience. You might call this an emotional resilience one as well. It could be positioned either way, but this is a breathing exercise, and it's called the power breath. And we can do this. You can do this while I'm talking here as well. It helps you move from a state of feeling stressed or anxious into a naturally calm and connected state. And the key here is a breathing pattern. So you want to exhale for twice as long as you inhale. So for example, and what works for me, personally, is that if I inhale for a count of 4, then I exhale for a count of 8. For others, it might be 3 and 6 or 5 and 10, depending on kind of what feels most natural and comfortable. But if you just count, inhale for a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale for a count of 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then repeat that pattern, maybe for a minute or 2 or 3 until you start to feel calmer. This technique triggers our parasympathetic nervous state and helps us shift, and that's the state where we feel naturally more calm as well. If you wanted a true mental resilience power-ups, again, this one kind of could be considered emotional resilience or mental, but another example of a mental resilience power-up would be to count backwards from 100 by 7. So 193, 86, and so on. And that would be a truly a strictly mental resilience power-up that you could do as well. So that's a little bit about power-ups. The next rule is recruiting allies. Allies are the people who support you along the way. There's great research and science that shows that where we do better when we have people that are allies to us and supporting us and helping us as well. And so one of the rules is to recruit allies and to check in with them on a regular basis. Your allies you can recruit one ally who's your main ally. You can switch and have a different ally every day. The key is that you have someone that's kind of seeing you and hearing you. Now, allies don't always have to be problem solvers. In fact, the best allies are there to listen and make sure that you feel seen, and vice versa. And so ally check-ins don't have to be long sessions. They can be very kind of short times of being seen and heard as well. An activity related to recruiting allies or having ally support. This is one that is a fun one. A lot of we hear from high school teachers, especially that enjoy using this technique with their classrooms and their students. It's called the +1 technique. You'll help to make a friend's day a little bit better. Pick someone in your life and ask them how their day is going on a scale of 1 to 10. When they reply, immediately say, "Is there anything I can do to make that number +1?" And then just listen. So, for example, if you turn to, if you're a teacher and you turn to a student, or if you're in a room and you turn to a friend or a colleague, how's your day going on a scale of 1 to 10? And they say, it's a 5. And then you would say, well, is there anything I can do to make that number a 6? And then let them talk. And so this is a great example. It's fun. It helps people, to be seen and heard as well. The final, I think this is the final rule: adopting a secret identity. A secret identity is an avatar and a heroic nickname that inspires and motivates you. Often they may highlight your unique personal strengths. The psychology of secret identities is really interesting. So there's good research out there that shows that when we can see the world through the lens of our avatar, it helps us with something called self-distancing. So it helps us look at the world. Looking at the world through an avatar helps us be more objective. We can look at it and say, this is my avatar experiencing this situation, and then we can coach that avatar. So self-distancing is a powerful technique in order to help us be more objective about our situation and what we might do about our situation as well. When Jane invented the Live Gainfully framework to recover from her concussion, she chose the name Jane the Concussion Slayer as her secret identity, because she was really inspired by Buffy as well. So that was an example of a secret identity. Now, to kind of close this out, because I wanted to just make a point about culture. So I shared a framework and examples of a simple framework with 7 rules. They're gainful, and they can be used to help build mental health and well-being and achieve goals and build resilience. Now, what we find is that one of the keys to the success of this framework is that it's used in all of life. And so the language becomes very powerful, and it almost becomes like a secret language that we're using with each other that shifts the way that we think about well-being and social support and achieving our goals. And so in order to transform culture, we're big proponents of adopting the language and not only the techniques in organizations and schools as well. So, ways we've seen this kind of brought to life, schools will put up power up bulletin boards and ask their students to add to the bulletin board their favorite power ups, things that really spark them and make them feel healthier, happier, stronger. So that's one way. Having discussions about bad guys. We see therapists, especially if they have adolescent and young adult patients that have trouble opening up and maybe aren't responding to kind of more clinical language. They'll introduce this framework and start to talk about the bad guys that the client has faced over the past week, and it just changing that language, from something that maybe feels more clinical to the term bad guys, and how'd you do against the bad guys, or was there a bad guy that you struggled with? It changes the tone and can kind of open up and create a safer and safer environment as well. Recruiting allies. Hey, I'm doing this thing called Live Gainfully and using this framework. Would you be my ally? Again, it's a great, simple, low risk way of asking people to be involved in this shift in kind of a way of thinking and self care. And community and team care as well. So that's it. That's my last point, is really around the insight around bringing the language to life. And again, magic happens, when we start to talk about, and use this language, and it does start to shift and create a culture of well-being or gainful well-being as well. So that's all that I wanted to share in terms of the objectives today. You can see my contact information. My email is on the screen. Feel free if you want to, if you're interested in questions that we don't address on this call, or if there's any interest in kind of any follow-up conversations as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll open it up for any questions that we may have.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that excellent presentation, Mr. Keith. And also, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. I'll be selecting some to display on the screen, okay? And also, Mr. Keith, can you please type in your email address if ever that wanted to contact you about this presentation? Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So it's in there.
Okay, good. So, do you have any final thoughts to share about your presentation also?
Well, I'll just share that we're excited about this idea of kind of helping to shift the way that we approach uh, well-being overall. And again, it's an insight that a lot of our traditional approaches are falling short, and so this is a new way. I also, I recognize kind of the idea of borrowing from the mindset and psychology of games and bringing it to the real world feels, it may feel too playful, too gameful. Is that serious? And so, I did want to make sure that in this presentation, I shared some of the research that shows that this can be really effective. There as well. And so those are just some final parting thoughts. And my hope is that what I shared today was informative and maybe created some new ways of thinking about approaching organizations and teams and students and employees and community members about empowering them as well as giving some practical tips and advice or things that could be taken away right away. And I hope some of the techniques, in and of themselves, like the get excited technique and some of the others, may be helpful.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. So, I don't see any questions here because I think you already provide all of the things that they needed. So,
Great.
here, before we wrap up this session, I have some important updates to share, like webinar recording. Or this session is being recorded and will be accessible on our International Trade Council YouTube channel. Please feel free to revisit or share it with your network. And also, if anyone of or if you're not already an International Trade Council member, attending this webinar qualifies you for a complimentary membership. Take advantage of this opportunity, okay? And you will be also receiving a participation certificate for today's webinar. Keep an eye on your email for more details. And also, I will also provide my email address here in the chat box for those who are not yet a member of the International Trade Council. Please feel free to leave a message in my inbox. So, wait, hold on. Trade. Okay, so I already typed my email there. So, again, a big thank you to you, Mr. Keith. I really appreciate you with this. So, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today, and of course, thank you to all of the participants for joining us today. So, we appreciate your active participations and insightful questions. Don't forget to check your email also for follow up those information, including the certificate. And have a fantastic afternoon to all of you. And we look forward to welcome you back to our future webinars. Goodbye to you.
Bye now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.